All right, hello everybody. For our PowerPoint today, we're going to be covering a topic that a lot of times actually gets skipped over, leading up to World War I and World War II, but I do think it's actually really important to talk about because it's going to help us understand, especially the lead up to World War II a little bit better, and it starts directly within this time period of imperialism, so when better to talk about it. We also got my daughter standing here, hanging out with, some sticks, just checking everything out with her backpack on. She's also kind of related to this one because the topic for this PowerPoint, early Japanese imperialism. Maybe she's staking out some land that she wants to claim. We'll see. So early Japanese imperialism. Again, this is not generally a topic that gets focused on, but you are stuck with me, a guy that really likes Japanese history and thinks that it is actually really important leading into World War II, so you're going to hear about it anyway. And we have, we're actually going to skip the intro video. We would do this if we were in class, but basically all you're missing out on is some old black and white footage of like Japanese artillery shelling a city, and then we get to see some super awesome calisthenics that the Japanese do. It's a really weird workout routine. Like, it's fun to watch, but we don't need to watch it. So we have talked about Japan before. We talked about them at the end of the Industrial Revolution because they were the only country that we really looked at, aside from Europe and America, obviously, Europe being a region, not a country, that managed to successfully industrialize. A big reason why they did that was because of America. Because remember, America came in with gunships. This guy named Admiral Perry is like, hey, these are our ships. They've got guns on them. We got a bunch of other ships back in America that actually have like trade supplies on them. We're going to send some more ships back next year, and you get to decide which ships they're going to be, the gunships or the merchant ships. Japan chose merchant ships because they did not want to get destroyed, and they pretty much immediately realized we got to catch up with the rest of the world or that's going to keep on happening. They looked at all the non-European, non-American countries getting taken over, decided they didn't want to be one of those, and in the Meiji Restoration, they rapidly industrialized. They based their government, military, economy, education, all that stuff on Western models, and they managed to catch up. So now, Japan is strong. By the time we hit 1890, they are basically the big kid on the block in Asia, which is a new thing for them because for most of history, they were very much living under the shadow of China. China being the big giant in the region, and they are honestly still a little bit concerned about China because, China's always been the big kid, but Japan is now industrialized. They have a super strong political system, a super strong military, a super strong economy, all because they had modernized and industrialized, and now the next step, much like Europe and America, is to imperialize. So where are they going to go? Korea, obviously. It is the closest place to them. I also just realized that I literally have a Minion meme on this slide. Apparently, I am a middle-aged mom on Facebook. Just throwing Minion memes at you guys. I am deeply ashamed of myself right now, and I apologize from the bottom of my soul. Oh well. So, Japan had actually started imperializing Korea a little bit early. What they did in 1876 is basically exactly what America did to them. They rolled into Korean ports, 3 of them to be precise, with some Japanese gunships, and they said, hey, how about you open these ports to trade? And Korea had no choice but to say yes. China was not happy about this, because for pretty much all of Korean history, China and Korea had like a big brother, little brother relationship going on here. And it was, I don't know, if you've ever had a big brother before, sometimes they get a little bit like bullying. It was more of the bullying kind of thing. China basically said, hey, Korea, as long as you give us stuff every year, if you give us tribute, we will not take you over. So China looks at what's going on and they're like, wait a minute, that's our trading partner, that's our military outpost. And Japan goes, yeah, but is it really? And they kind of have a little bit of an argument back and forth over this until 1885, when both countries go, all right, here's what we'll do. Neither one of us will send our armies into Korea. That way we won't fight over it. But both of us can keep on doing our trading stuff there if we want. We just can't send our military in. And as my Minion meme over here tells us, that's not going to be a deal that's really kept to. Leading to the First Sino-Japanese War. Now you're going to see the word Sino pop up every now and then. Sino just means Chinese. So it's the first China-Japan war, Chinese-Japanese war. It starts in 1894, so what is that, not even 10 years? That's 9 years after they agreed not to send troops in. There is a rebellion in Korea. And the king of Korea looks to China and they go, hey, big bro, you want to help us out here? And China goes, sure. And they send their military in to help with the rebellion. And Japan goes, excuse me? China sends in their military, so Japan sends in their military. And we can see how well that's going to go for China. This being, of course, the Japanese military coming in and destroying everything, and then also for some reason Taiwan, because sure, why not? If you can get Taiwan, you might as well take Taiwan. Go for it. You do you, Japan. This is also when Japan gets to make their first trading cards to get, the original Pokemon. You got to catch them all. These are things called ukiyo-e, which is woodblock prints, and they would carve these scenes on blocks of wood, and then they would stamp them onto paper using different colors of ink. And they would pretty much always come in sets of 3, and they showed off how awesome the Japanese military was, except for maybe this guy. But even this guy, he fell off the bridge, but he's got a dude in a headlock here. So even that guy's pretty awesome. This guy's bayoneting a dude who's stuck in the water. There's somehow an explosion going on in the water over here, I guess. Sure, why not? But if you're a kid in Japan, you can go collect these, and you want to get the entire set, and you got to get all 3 parts. So literally the original Pokemon cards right there. Ukiyo-e. China gets destroyed. Within months, Japan has completely driven them out of Korea. They've destroyed the Chinese Navy. They have actually started taking over part of China, and China is forced to surrender. That leads to this thing called the Treaty of Shimonoseki. Japan basically makes China agree that Korea is independent, China has to give up territory, and they have to pay money. So Japan has officially started to imperialize here. Korea was kind of a test run for imperialism, but with this, they've forced another, what used to be a much bigger power than them, into submission here. It's also when we're going to start seeing a little bit of involvement from European powers, because they're going to start coming in and being well, that territory, I don't know about that. So we get a Western perspective here, and this is really how everybody felt about it. Even Japan going in, they weren't entirely sure how well they do against China, because China was the giant of the region. And now the Japanese have destroyed them. This is a good time to point out, by the way, try to avoid this word. This is actually a racial slur. I feel most people don't realize that because they think it's just an abbreviation of the word Japanese. But especially during World War II, it became a racial slur. So just you'll see it used in historical sources, and you can't do anything about that. It's how sometimes the N-word pops up in historical sources. It is what it is, but just try to avoid it. Next up, Japan wants to flex their muscles again. And beating China, that's cool, that's whatever. But we already saw China was not a big kid, right? They got destroyed. We saw that in our last lecture. Nobody in Europe had a problem taking on China. The real thing is going to be if Japan could take on a European country. So in 1904, Russia and Japan get in a little bit of a tussle over this right here, Port Arthur, because Russia wants a warm water port. The thing about Russia is they do have access to the coast, but this is all really cold water, which means it freezes over, it's bad for trade, it's tough to get out of. A warm water port will be way better, and Port Arthur is where they want to go. So they've got a railroad they build down to it, and they start moving troops in, and Japan's hey, you better back off, and Russia's hey, you better shut up. And then Japan decides they don't like it, so they fight. And this is another one where everybody just assumes, okay, Japan's going to lose. I mean, come on, they're an Asian country against a European country. And yeah, Russia might not be the best European country at this time period. They're way behind on industrialism, but they do have some industrialism. I mean, they've got a railroad here, and at the end of the day, they're European against Asia. Come on. That's sarcasm, don't take me seriously, but that's how people felt at that time. So Russia does an oopsie. Because keep in mind, this is the east coast of Russia. That's not where the activity is happening, right? The action in Russia is way over here in the west, because that's by the important area, Europe. So Russia's main fleet is way over here on the western side. You can't get that fleet through Russia, right? So how do you get to Japan with that fleet? You go out to the Mediterranean, You go all the way around Africa. You come all the way back up Africa. You go around India. You go through Southeast Asia. You get into the Pacific. And then, through a series of bad judgment calls and poor intelligence, and I don't mean like, knowledge intelligence, I mean like tactical intelligence, like knowledge of where the enemy is, you sail right in between two Japanese fleets, and your entire fleet gets decimated in one battle. How are you going to fight Japan with no fleet? You are not. So Russia gets destroyed. The Russian fleet is gone. Japan is able to once again force a peace treaty that is much in their favor. They get Manchuria, which is this area right here. It's kind of like northeast China, basically. And they make Russia agree to stay out of Korea. Teddy Roosevelt, the American president, actually gets a peace prize for negotiating peace in this. But we again start noticing some Western involvement that's going to become a problem, because Teddy Roosevelt makes sure, usually when you win a war at this time period, the person you beat has to pay you these things called reparations. They have to give you money for like the inconvenience of fighting them, basically. Roosevelt makes sure that Russia will not pay reparations to Japan, because that sets a bad precedent, right? I mean, that's a country full of white people paying money to a country full of non-white people? Oh, that sounds pretty bad. Again, sarcasm. Please don't, I know it's even harder to hear when I'm not, there to tell you directly. That's not me, actually saying that, but that is the mindset of this time period. It's that mindset of social Darwinism, that stuff we looked at in the first PowerPoint you looked at, and the idea of the white man's burden. Japan, they're not white, so we can't really let them be thinking they're equal to white countries here. So Teddy Roosevelt gets a peace prize for doing this, but he's actually kind of reinforcing something that's going to become a big problem of that racial inequality. So we got, again, Japan here being the definite underdog, just knocking out Russia in one fell blow, taking out their entire fleet. We got France, keep it up, Russia, you're winning, and well, if this is winning, what will he do to me if I lose? Won't make you pay money because Teddy Roosevelt's there. We got the Tsar. This guy should look familiar, by the way, because that's Tsar Nicholas II, the guy that gets overthrown and then killed in the Russian Revolution. And this is one of the reasons why the people of Russia felt that he was weak, because he's the leader that lost a battle to Japan. I mean, look, you got these Russian battleships that are all scared and running from these tiny Japanese torpedo boats. You can see, by the way, that racial mindset towards Japan here, right? Even when Japan is winning, they're being portrayed as look at this guy, the Mikado back here, that's the leader of Japan. They're not even accurately identifying who the leader of Japan is. They're being drawn as the tiny little yappy dog here. Even in victory, they're being portrayed as weak and less than. So going back to Korea, at this point, Korea is a protectorate of Japan. That means that Japan doesn't outright control them, but they do, for example, get to send in advisors, heavy air quotes, to tell the Korean government what to do. So they don't control them, but they do get to tell them what to do. Take that for what you will. In 1910, Japan decides, you know what, enough of this charade, we're just going to annex them. We're going to bring them under our complete control. So now, if a country has been annexed, that means that it becomes part of another country. So now Korea is part of Japan, and they treat them super nice. No, they don't. Japan rules Korea for 35 years. They're going to have them until the end of World War II. Notice the timing there, 1910 plus 35. That's 1945, the end of World War II. And they were incredibly harsh leaders. They shut down Korean schools. They shut down Korean newspapers. When they reopened schools, they were now Japanese schools, and the Korean language and Korean history was replaced with Japanese language and Japanese history, because you're not Korean now, you're Japanese. Korean businesses and farmers had their property taken away from them and given to Japanese businesses and Japanese farmers. Huge amounts of resentment is going to kind of build up. We get a strong Korean nationalist movement going on, but much like we see in any imperialized area, the imperializing country comes in and completely tries to take over and annihilate the culture and mindset of the local government, the local leaders. So we got Russia and Japan here fighting over Korea. Korea is in a tight place, and we already saw who won that battle. It was Japan. We've got Korea then acting as a bridge for Japan to go straight over to Manchuria, and then of course, if we keep on going from Manchuria, what's after that? That's right, it's China. So, yeah, they're just getting taken over and destroyed, and I believe this next one is something we're not doing. Yeah, we're not going to do the acrostic poem. So there will be a worksheet that goes along with this one, just to give you an idea of what the treaties are going to look like from this, but otherwise, that's where we're going to leave off Japan for now. We will pick up from this basically exact same point when we get to the interwar years with China, or with Japan, and we start seeing how they're going to get involved into World War II. But for now, we're going to kind of go back to ignoring Japan for about a unit, and then we'll see them again moving forward. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.